Hello everyone. Our topic for today is the component of population growth. Population simply means the number of people living in a particular place. But have you ever wondered why this number keeps changing? Sometimes there are more people, sometimes fewer. In this lesson, we are going to learn what causes those changes, what makes a population grow, what makes it slow down, and how that affects our country's development. Let's begin by seeing what exactly we will be studying today. Here's what we will cover in this lesson. First, we will find out what population growth means. Second, we will look at how Ghana's population has changed over the years. Third, we will compare Ghana's population growth with other countries in Africa and around the world. Fourth, we will discuss the main factors that cause populations to change, things like birth rate, death rate, and migration. And finally, we will take a closer look at birth and death rates, what causes them to rise or fall, and their effects. By the end of this lesson, you'll be able to explain how these factors work together to shape a country's population. Let's begin with a quick thought question. Is Ghana's population growing or shrinking? You have three possible answers. A. Increasing, more people every year. B. Decreasing, fewer people over time. C. Staying the same, population remains steady. If you said increasing, you are right. Every year, more people are born than those who die, and Ghana's population continues to rise. This growth affects everything: our schools, our jobs, housing, and even how government plans for the future. So now that we know Ghana's population is growing, let's find out exactly what we mean by population growth. Population growth simply refers to the change in the total number of people living in a particular place over time. This change can be an increase or a decrease. When more people are born than those who die, the population increases. When more people die than those being born, or when many people leave the country, the population decreases. We can think of it using a simple formula: births minus deaths plus net migration. That means population growth depends on three things: the number of people born, the number who die, and the number who move in or out. Let's take a quick example. If Ghana has more births than deaths, and more people enter the country than leave, our total population will grow. But if many people migrate out, or if death rates rise, the population will grow more slowly or even fall. So, population growth tells us whether a place is getting more crowded or less populated over time. Now that we know what population growth means, let's learn how to measure it. We call this the population growth rate. The population growth rate shows how fast or how slowly a population is changing over a specific period, usually 1 year. It's written as a percentage that compares the number of people now to the number of people before. The formula is change in population divided by original population times 100. Let's use an example. Imagine a town had 1,000 people last year and 1,020 people this year. First, we find the difference. That's 20 people. Then, we divide 20 by 1,000 and multiply by 100. That gives us 2%. This means the town's population has grown by 2% in 1 year. Even though 2% looks small, it matters a lot when you are dealing with millions of people. A higher growth rate means the population is increasing quickly, which affects how much food, housing, education, and healthcare a country must provide. That's why governments study growth rates. They help in planning for the future. Ghana's population has been growing very quickly over the years. In 1960, Ghana had about 6.7 million people. By 2024, that number had risen to over 33 million people. That's almost 5 times more people in just about 60 years. Why did this happen? There are a few main reasons. First, healthcare in Ghana has improved. Second, fewer babies die at a young age because more mothers and children get medical care. People are also living longer thanks to better nutrition and sanitation. Today, Ghana's population continues to grow at about 2% each year. This means if the growth rate stays the same, our population could double in about 33 years. But how about other countries? How does Ghana's growth compare with that of other countries? If we look at the chart on the screen, Ghana's population growth rate is around 2%. Nigeria's rate is slightly higher at about 2.1%, while Kenya's is close, around 2% as well. South Africa, however, grows much more slowly, only about 1.2%. And look at Japan. Its rate is negative, minus 0.4%. That means Japan's population is actually shrinking over time. On average, the world's growth rate is around 1%. So Ghana's population is growing faster than the world average and much faster than in many developed countries. This tells us that countries at different stages of development experience population changes at different speeds. Now, let's find out why these differences exist. Why do some countries like Ghana and Nigeria have higher population growth rates than others, like Japan or South Africa? The main reason is the difference between developing countries and developed countries. Let's break that down clearly. In developing countries like Ghana, Nigeria, and Kenya, people usually have larger families. Culturally, having many children is seen as a sign of blessing, strength, and even security in old age. Parents have more children so that they have more help on the farm, at home, or in family businesses. Also, in many rural areas, access to family planning is limited. Not everyone has the information or resources to control how many children they have. In addition, early marriages are more common. When girls marry early, they start having children earlier and usually have more of them. All these reasons make birth rates high, and when birth rates are high, the population grows faster. The situation is different for developed countries like Japan, the United Kingdom, or the United States. In these countries, people often prefer smaller and nuclear families. There's better access to health education and modern contraception, which helps couples plan when to have children and how many. Most people also marry later, after finishing school or building their careers. As a result, birth rates are low and population growth slows down or even starts to decline. So you see, the differences in population growth are not just about numbers. They come from people's way of life or culture, their values, their level of education, and their economic conditions. Developing countries tend to grow faster because of high birth rates and younger populations, while developed countries grow slowly because of low birth rates and aging populations. Now that we understand why population growth rates differ across countries, let's look at the main factors that cause populations to change. There are three major factors: birth rate, death rate, and migration. These three always work together to shape how a population changes. We'll go over them one by one. Let's begin with the first factor of population change, the birth rate. The birth rate is the number of babies born per 1,000 people in a population every year. It tells us how many new people are being added to the population through births. When the birth rate is high, more babies are born, and that causes the population to grow faster. Countries with high birth rates often have younger populations and rapid population growth. For example, many developing countries, including Ghana, have higher birth rates because families tend to have more children. In short, a high birth rate means more children are being born each year, and that leads to a bigger population. But what causes high birth rates in a country? We looked at some of these previously. The first reason is that large families are valued. In many cultures, especially in parts of Africa, people believe that having many children brings honor and security to the family. Children are seen as a blessing. The more you have, the better. The second reason is that people marry young. When people marry early, they usually have more years to give birth, and that leads to more children overall. The third reason is limited family planning knowledge. In many communities, people may not have enough information or access to modern family planning methods. This means they may not be able to control the number or timing of their children effectively. And the fourth reason is that children provide labor and support. In rural areas, children often help on the farm, take care of animals, fetch water, or support their parents as they grow older. So families tend to have more children to help share these responsibilities. All these factors together make birth rates high in many developing countries, including Ghana. Let's look at what happens when a country has a high birth rate. When many babies are born every year, the population grows rapidly. That means more people are added to the country's population each year. This can have both positive and negative effects. On the positive side, a high birth rate means that in the future, the country will have a large workforce, more young people to work, innovate, and build the nation. But there are also challenges. A fast-growing population increases demand for schools, hospitals, housing, food, and jobs. If the country's resources don't grow at the same speed, it becomes harder to meet everyone's needs. So while a high birth rate brings energy and growth, it also puts pressure on the government and society to provide enough resources and opportunities for everyone. That's why population planning and education are so important. They help balance the number of people with the country's ability to support them. The next major factor that affects population change is the death rate. The death rate is the number of people who die per 1,000 people in a population each year. It shows how many lives are lost within a given time. When death rates are high, more people die, and that slows down or even reduces the population's growth. But when death rates are low, fewer people die, and the population grows faster. Countries with good healthcare, clean water, and better living conditions usually have lower death rates. That's because people live longer and healthier lives. Let's look at what causes high death rates in some countries. First, poor sanitation. In places where there is little access to clean water and proper waste disposal, diseases spread easily. People can get sick from contaminated food or water, which increases the number of deaths. Second, limited healthcare access. In many rural areas, hospitals and clinics are far away or not well equipped. When people can't get medical help on time, simple illnesses can become deadly. Third, malnutrition and poverty. When families can't afford enough food or proper nutrition, their bodies become weak and more likely to get sick. Poverty also limits access to healthcare and clean living conditions. Fourth, prevalent diseases. Diseases like malaria, cholera, and tuberculosis continue to cause many deaths, especially where prevention and treatment are limited. And finally, road accidents. Many lives are lost each year due to unsafe roads and reckless driving. All these factors increase death rates and slow down population growth. That's why improving sanitation, healthcare, and safety is so important for saving lives and helping a country develop. When a country has a high death rate, it affects many areas of life and slows down population growth. The first effect is that the population grows more slowly because more people die each year. This can lead to a smaller number of working-age people and fewer people to support the economy. Another effect is a reduction in life expectancy. When many people die at younger ages, the average lifespan in the country becomes shorter. High death rates also cause the loss of skilled workers. When educated and experienced people die, the country loses important knowledge and talent that could help with development. There's also an emotional and social impact on families and communities. Losing loved ones can lead to hardship, especially when the person who dies was the main provider in the family. That's why countries work hard to reduce death rates by improving healthcare, sanitation, food supply, and living conditions. When death rates fall, people live longer, healthier lives, and the population becomes more stable. The third major factor of population change is migration. Migration means the movement of people from one place to another. People migrate for many reasons: to look for jobs, education, safety, or better living conditions. When people move into a country, the population increases. But when people move out of a country, the population decreases. So if more people move in than move out, the population grows. And if more people move out than move in, the population becomes smaller. The difference between the number of people entering and leaving a country is called net migration. Migration doesn't only change the size of a population, it can also change its structure. For example, if most of the people leaving are young and skilled workers, it affects the labor force and development of the country. But if people return home after gaining experience abroad, they can help the country grow faster. Migration, birth rate, and death rate all work together to shape how a country's population grows or shrinks over time. To test your understanding of today's lesson, here's your assignment. Write a short essay of about 150 to 200 words explaining the three main factors that affect population growth and describe how they work together in Ghana. This exercise will help you connect everything we've learned. Let's wrap up today's lesson with our key takeaways. First, remember the basic formula for population growth: births minus deaths plus migration. Second, Ghana continues to experience steady population growth with a growth rate of about 1.9 to 2% per year. Third, population change is shaped by social, cultural, and economic factors. Understanding population growth helps us plan better for Ghana's future, for our schools, our jobs, our cities, and our environment. And that brings us to the end of today's lesson. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel. See you in the next video.